Do I look at you or the camera?
You'll just look right at me. You'll just ignore the camera.
Okay.
There are a lot of people saying you could be the next great quarterback.
I can already see it now. Cam running down the tunnel with the crowd chanting his name.
I hear you've been invited to train with legend Isaiah White himself. Care to elaborate?
I want to be the GOAT.
Cameron King. Great meeting you. I'm a fan.
That's crazy. I damn near worship you growing up.
Who are you?
I'm him.
Who are you?
I'm him. Monta.
Let's play a little catch. We going to the league! You want to play at your highest level? You want to be a legend? Let me tell you something. This ain't a game. Who are they? Just gonna toss the ball around a little. You wanna hit this? You can't handle it. I understand. Oh, too slow.
Wait, what are we doing?
That man's smile about to be on the floor. This is how you do your teammate?
What is this?
Equal loves, enemies, secretly.
In this game, violence is rewarded, so learn to enjoy it.
Get your shit together! Activate my hate.
Cam, are you okay?
I think something's off.
You don't know what you're getting yourself into.
Now we playing some football!
Don't have to do this.
Activate my hate.
I've never been more certain of anything in my life.
And how bad does Cameron Cade want it?
I ain't a killer, but don't push me.
I'm not just gonna give it to you. You're gonna have to take it from
I
me.
ain't a killer, but don't push me.
What if I say no?
Run. Think of it as a gift from the gods.
Killer, but don't push me. So what are you willing to sacrifice?
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the latest episode of Fresh Cuts. This is Mike. Join me as always. It's Mr. Venom. What's up, Venom?
Greetings and salutations, failed football players. Yeah, I'm doing pretty well. How the hell are you doing, Mike?
I am doing well. We're going to be talking about a football-themed movie on Football Sunday, so that's kind of interesting. Good timing with the release, I guess. Also with us, it's Don and Ellie. What's up, Don?
Yeah, what's going on? Always happy to be here.
All right, so that's so we are covering a movie titled Him. It's funny because the advertising for this movie, they wanted to splash Jordan Peele's name all over, but really he's like a producer, and how much of a producer that even means in this case, I have no idea. But the director is Justine Tipping, and Peele's not a writer either, so but that was probably like one way to get people to the theater to see this maybe. But anyways, the synopsis for Him off IMDb: a young athlete descends into a world of terror when he's invited to train with a legendary champion whose charisma curdles into something darker. Ooh, something darker. Well, how dark did this movie get? We'll discuss that. First, it's Venom. General thoughts on Him.
I gotta say, I did not enjoy this film. This one, and that's saying a lot from a horror fan who loves football, and I couldn't get into a football horror movie. I will say that this movie does have one scene that made me smile. And it doesn't save the movie by any stretch of the imagination, but think back to my review of Pete Davidson's The Home, and you might have a pretty good idea of what I'm talking about with this one. But yeah, this turns into, like, for the whole first act, it's just your basic football movie. You get some training stuff. I mean, there is one catalyst event where our main character gets attacked by a mysterious person. But other than that, the first act is pretty much just football, playing football, practicing football, getting happy because he gets invited to the GOAT's house, the guy who I kind of liked how they gave him 8 Super Bowl rings, purposely giving him one more than the real life Tom Brady. So I thought that was kind of funny, almost like a little middle finger to Tom Brady. But obviously, this movie doesn't have the NFL license. So like the football league is the USFF. But when the movie opens, we're watching the equivalent of a Super Bowl. I mean, it's got Roman numerals on it and everything. But like I said, the league is the USFF. But it's one of those movies. It just takes way too long to get going, to actually get to any kind of genre even feel to it. Like maybe by the second act you start to feel a little uneasy about things that are happening in this house. I forgot the character's name. Isaiah White. Marlon Wayans plays Isaiah White, who, like I said, has been the quarterback of the San Antonio Saviors for the last 14. Well, no, for the last almost 20 seasons, but he actually had a major injury that kind of left him off the field for a very long time. But then he came back, won a Super Bowl, and the movie kind of picks up from there. Is he going to retire? Is he going to keep going? Is this new prodigy, Cameron Cade, or Cam for short, this guy who's got the highest marks coming out of college, he's expected to be the number 1 pick. People are already talking about him being potentially a candidate for the greatest player ever, before he's even taken one snap as a professional. So there's definitely a lot of pressure on this character. We find out some stuff about his backstory that kind of drives him to do what he does. And then we get to Isaiah White's house, or Marlon Wayne's character's house, and it starts to get a little weird. Yes, the level of security and the fact that the fans, Isaiah White's fans, are all, I say almost like a cult. They are a cult, basically, his fans. To the point where one of his fans actually tries to commit murder to guarantee that Isaiah gets his starting quarterback job the following season. So that's some zealous shit right there. But overall, yeah, I just found the movie to be dull. Like every time something even mildly interesting happens, it kind of just fizzles out and never really, they never really explore it very much. We get a bunch of unlikable characters. Like I'm not even that big a fan of our protagonist, honestly, but the most of the antagonists are just unlikable people. It was great to see 2 stand-up comedians that I'm a fan of, Tim Heidecker and Jim Jeffries. Jim Jeffries especially. I've actually seen him live out here in LA, and I just absolutely love the man. Tim Heidecker is the veteran of the Tim and Eric show, the old Adult Swim show. So, and who also does stand up. So it was kind of cool to see them in roles kind of outside of their comfort zone, even though both of them still kind of had comedic elements to their roles. Jim Jeffries playing Isaiah White's personal doctor, and then Tim Heidecker playing Tom, the agent for both Isaiah White and Cam Cade. So, the performances are okay. Where the movie shines is in its filmmaking. Like it's a very pretty movie. We talked about this last week where we thought, based on the trailer, that it was going to be something along the lines of like a Starry Eyes or a Neon Demon. Well, my friends, unfortunately, whereas Neon Demon and Starry Eyes had style and substance, unfortunately, this movie only has style. It looks very nice. It's got a hard driving hip hop score. So if you're into that kind of music, you'll probably get into it. I saw it in a Dolby theater. So despite not really being into that music, I could still, speak on the sound design. The sound design was pretty cool. A lot of the scenes that kind of go down to slow motion have some cool sound design. And like I said, cinematography is fine. It's a football movie. Especially if you're someone who's not interested in football at all, which is why I'm very curious to hear what Don has to say about this. But if you're not interested in football at all, I don't see how this movie would interest you enough for you to want to finish it. Like I said, just not enough happens. And then finally, when the shit finally hits the fan, it's pretty much the final 2 scenes of the movie. And by that point, the movie's already used up whatever goodwill it may have earned. So just, kind of dull, kind of, been there, done that. The story of what is someone willing to do to gain success in their chosen field. Like I said, we mentioned Starry Eyes and Neon Demon, but unfortunately, this movie wishes it was even a quarter of either of those movies. And that's coming from someone who's not a fan of Starry Eyes, don't forget. I can admit Starry Eyes is a well-made movie. It's a decent story. Again, it's just characterization with me. I did not like the main character in Starry Eyes. I thought she was very woe is me, despite being a gorgeous statuesque looking, practically looking like a supermodel, but she's just woe is me because she can't get a job in acting, her one chosen field. So that attitude just kind of never really works for me. Comes off as slightly entitled. But anyway, back to him. This one, like I said, just when it would start to get interesting, it just kind of fizzled out. And then finally we get the final scene of the movie. And folks, I've always said, I've said it before and I'll say it again, I love my petty and vindictive endings. I love when a protagonist in a movie knows what needs to be done and has no problem doing it. Like I said, Pete Davidson at the end of The Home is a perfect example for 2025. The Home is not a great movie. I think all three of us agreed on that. But there were elements of it that I really enjoyed. And like I said, that ending just, left me with a smile on my face. Despite him really only having that one good scene, I did still enjoy that scene for whatever it's worth. But like I said, it's not really worth, sitting through an hour and a half movie just to get to the last 5 minutes. So yeah, I would say this one's a skip. I would say wait for not even VOD. I'd say wait until it's streaming somewhere. Unless you are a gigantic fan of football movies and thrillers specifically, maybe I would say go out and check it out. And like I said, if you're a fan of hip hop too, you got that cool score. But for me, it just really didn't do much for me. I found myself looking at my phone constantly throughout the movie. Luckily, I was in a fairly empty theater. I actually saw it on Friday morning. So most people are still at work Friday morning. So, empty theater makes it for a nice experience. But just found it to be a very dull movie with, a mildly satisfying ending, but it's just too little too late by that point. So I guess I'll leave my general thoughts at that. Not anything that I can really write home about or even recommend. So yeah, that's it for now.
All right, let's throw the ball over to Don for his thoughts on him.
Yeah, nothing to write home about or recommend. I think that perfectly encapsulates everything. Yeah, not a whole lot here for me. Really reminds me somewhat of maybe not necessarily in content or concept, but in execution similar to Opus, where I get where they're going, but the concept just doesn't come together. And yeah, the whole thing just never really caught fire. The pacing is just all over the place. I do know a tad bit about football. I know that you have a brown ball that you throw around the place and people run track and field and tackle into each other. But yeah, other than that, that's pretty much the limit of my football knowledge. So a lot of the first half just not interesting at all. Not a whole lot of horror, not a whole lot of anything happening. Guy's not really that interesting. I don't see where the charismatic cult followers come from. Even the main guy, the one that we're following, I don't get anything out of him either. And the whole thing is it just drags. And, yeah, you got a guy yelling in his face. Yeah, you've got, intense workouts and, intense, all these things that are going on. It just doesn't translate into any kind of, thrilling atmosphere or any kind of like chills or anything like that. You're watching a sports drama, and the only thing about it that's horrifying is what the end goal is. But even that's just not all that enticing, all that thrilling. It's way too long for what it is. This thing should have been wrapped up much quicker than what it is. Um, yeah, there's just very little about this that I really enjoyed. Again, how many times can I say it? Yeah, it looks good, but so what? And I think that's kind of where I am with this one. Yeah, it looks good. Maybe the characters aren't great, but okay, some of it's not bad, and if you're looking at it for acting quality, um, the motivations are there, but I don't care, and I think that's kind of the problem is that I don't care. Maybe I would have liked it better if I knew something about football, but even still, there's just not a whole lot here. Not a whole lot happens, and it's not really that scary or terrifying. So, yeah, I don't have much else to add to this. There's just not a lot to it. Seems kind of like a weird choice to send to theaters, but oh well. I mean, this will probably be on streaming by the end of October or sooner. So maybe for a Halloween marathon, if you have like a, sports based or, like a deal with the devil kind of a challenge, but there's far better ones out there that can feel that much better than this one. So yeah, I can't even say that this is a curiosity recommend. There's literally nothing here. So yeah, I guess back to you, Mike.
All right. So I actually agree with the comparison to Opus. It kind of had a similar setup, just obviously in a different industry. One thing right off the bat that confused me is like in Opus, they had to give up like their cell phones, and it made sense because like they were actually revealing some like new music or something that they didn't, wanting to get out to the public. This, it's like you're just going to train. Yes, I don't know. It seemed like that never really became relevant the rest of the way. I also I see a rough comparison to like a movie like Any Given Sunday that's supposed to show like kind of like the trials and tribulations of like a new player coming into the league. Now, I would say that movie's way better. It's also not a horror movie, so it's like the comparisons kind of end there. We're just kind of like showing what it's like in the industry of football. Um I don't I don't know like what the origin of this movie is because it almost feels like it wasn't even meant to be horror to begin with, and they just sort of like found a way to add some like aspect. I don't even want to get into the specifics, I guess, since we're not in spoilers, but add some specifics because like I don't know if I'm this recruit kid, there's nothing that went on in that compound even remotely that would like make me want to like play for this team or in professional sports at all. Obviously, this is some type of tradition or routine that's worked in the past because we get a scene that explains that kind of like legacy stuff. But I'm just like, what are we doing here? And I don't even it. I struggled with it because I get sort of like what the metaphors are supposed to be when we kind of get the stuff at the end with like the ownership and the agent and the manager. But I'm just like, it's so it's so already like a real life thing. You can make the argument that you almost don't need like the extra elements that they try to lay on real thick. Now it results, like Venom said, it results in like a super cool scene. The way the movie ends, like I'm fine with like what happens, but it just felt like, was this even originally supposed to be like this? And did they just figure like a horror movie would sell more tickets maybe? So let's like put a little bit of that flair into it, but I don't know. And then like part of me is like, oh, is any of that element of the movie supposed to be taken literal, or is it like almost like surrealism? What's going on? I don't know. I feel like this movie it had some interesting ideas and concepts, but it's just a little all over the place with its execution and what it's actually trying to say. And ultimately that just kind of makes it a less than recommendable movie to me. Like I just don't think I could recommend it. I didn't have that. much fun with it. And I'm a football fan too, so like going into it, I was like, okay, like let's see what they will bring as far as the sport, because I felt from the trailer I had a pretty good idea of like what the movie was gonna be about, and I was kind of correct on that. I mean, I don't think the trailer was trying to conceal it, but I don't know. I would say it was a frustrating watch because there's some ideas there that you can do something with. I just don't think they executed well. Marlon Wayans was cool. I actually think Marlon Wayans is a better serious actor than like sometimes he gets credit for, because he hasn't had a ton of roles like playing serious stuff, but every time he does, he's usually pretty good. So I thought he was good in this. It's just that the script didn't give him much to work with. Um, but if you saw this movie and you liked some of the ideas, go watch Any Given Sunday, because I think they hit on like a lot of the same things. It's just not a horror movie. It's just more straight a football business versus sport type movie and the trials and tribulations that go along with it. Um, and it has a hell of a cast too. So I guess for general thoughts at the moment, I'll leave it there. Back to you, Venom.
I think I'll go ahead and make it 3 out of 3 on the comparison to Opus. I wasn't even thinking about that during my general thoughts, but yeah, absolutely. Another movie that has, a group of people, or, either a single person or a group of people going to a compound for some mysterious reason. And obviously, nefarious things start happening, blah, blah, blah. I think as much as I liked Marlon Wayans in this one, I think I'll probably still give the nod to Malkovich and Opus. Something about Malkovich as a villain just always works for me. But I do agree with Mike that Marlon Wayans, when he does serious roles, usually nails it. Requiem for a Dream was just a shock. I like that. That might have been like that. Probably was like his first like serious role, right? And it just blew my mind when I saw it. Like I couldn't get over it. This is the guy from In Living Color or whatever. So
Don't be,
I,
don't. It was. I was like, this is the guy from Don't Be a Menace.
yeah, don't be a menace to the hood while drinking your juice on the sidewalk, whatever the hell the name of that movie is. Anyway, yeah. No, absolutely. Like I said, I will absolutely agree with Mike on that one. Marlon is definitely the highlight of this movie. Though I will say, and I agree with Mike again, that he just didn't have a whole lot of material. The material made him very one note, and I would have liked to have seen more than just one note out of Marlon in this one. He's just this, kind of egotistical greatest player of all time that's, trying to decide if this new kid is going to be the one to take over for him, blah, blah, blah. But I wish we would have gotten maybe some more serious scenes with Marlon. And maybe, and there is comedy in it. There are like little moments of levity throughout the movie, not like side splitting comedy by any stretch of the imagination, but Marlon has some fun in a few scenes here and there. But I definitely would have liked to have seen him stretch his range a little bit more, because we know he can. We've seen it. So I would have liked to have seen that. But again, to Mike's point, it's the material. He just didn't have a whole lot of material here to work with, sadly. Maybe if Jordan Peele would have actually written this one, it might have come off a little bit more enjoyable. But unfortunately, and as far as his name being on it, I figure anything by Monkey Paw Productions is going to have Jordan Peele's name prevalently on it. It's kind of like Eli Roth presents Hostel, or no, was it Eli Roth or Quentin Tarantino? No, it was Quentin Tarantino. And it's like, you had nothing to do with that movie whatsoever. You just liked it and told people that you liked it, and somehow you got your name attached to it. So interesting concept. But yeah, I'm not sure what else we could really talk about with this one that's kind of spoiler free. The walkthrough should be fairly quick, except I probably will expand a little bit on that final scene because of how much I enjoyed it. And then I do have a theory also about this movie that some people may have thought about and some people may not have thought about. So we'll see if my co-host thought about that. My theory. I'm not saying that I'm right. It's a theory that I have of what actually happened in this movie, but we'll get to that. So if my co-hosts don't have anything else to add, I guess this will be your final spoiler warning. If you haven't seen him, well, you're one of the lucky ones. But if you do plan on seeing it, go ahead and pause the podcast, come back to us after you've seen it, and check out our more detailed thoughts on the movie. Otherwise, if you don't care about it or you've already seen it, stick around with us. So let's go ahead and start. Our movie opens 14 years in the past. We see young Cameron Cade, probably like 8 years old, maybe 7 or 8 years old, and he's watching the equivalent of the Super Bowl. Like I said, they don't have the NFL license in this movie, so it's not called the Super Bowl. I forget what the actual game was called, but it still had like the Roman numerals on it, and it was the championship game for the USFF. So obviously it was a big deal. The Cam's whole family was there, and they were watching Isaiah White, the potentially the greatest player ever. Even at that young stage in his career, he was considered one of the greatest players in the league. Anyway, it's the final play of the game. The San Antonio Saviors are down by a few points, and there's a Hail Mary throw. Now, we don't actually get to see the play like on the television. We're watching young Cam Cade's reaction to it. He ends up throwing a touchdown, which wins the game by literally 1 point. But then he has a horrific compound fracture on his leg. Literally, his femur is sticking out of the lower part of his thigh. It looks just gnarly as hell. Probably some of the better gore in the movie, sadly. But yeah. So obviously, when you see a kind of a veteran quarterback with an injury like that, maybe not veteran, but 5, 6, 7 years into his career, you kind of figure that's it. I mean, that's the Joe Theismann injury. Sorry to remind you of that, Mike. But yeah, you've got those career-ending injuries that, and this one looked like it was career-ending. Well, what ended up happening is I forget the exact timeline, but Isaiah White ended up coming back like 10 years later or something, won his job back with the Saviors, and basically comes back and wins the Super Bowl. Their equivalent of the Super Bowl. And that's when the movie then kind of shifts to modern day, where once again, Isaiah White is playing in the championship game. Once again, this time he doesn't, win the game on the final play. It's actually a blowout. They end up blowing out their opponent, and he wins the MVP. And this is his 8th Super Bowl ring now. He literally has a ring for every finger. He's just got to get a couple for the thumbs now. But yeah, he's got 8 championship rings. And his contract is up, and the talk of the town is basically, is Isaiah White going to retire, or is he not going to retire? Now, as it turns out, Cameron Cade is an absolute beast of a quarterback. Coming out of college, he's like the assumed number 1 pick that he's just going to, and somehow this is the thing that kind of gets me though. This movie kind of assumes that football fans don't know how football works, because how did the San Antonio Saviors win the championship, but then get the number 1 pick in the draft the following year? Like, that's some general management magic, I think. Like, how the hell does the Super Bowl champ get the number 1 pick the following year? Point being, the San Antonio Saviors are very interested in Cam Cade because of his skills, because of his prowess on the field, his leadership, just everything. He basically checks off all the boxes. He's basically, I'm trying to think who was a big quarterback coming out. Like when Peyton Manning came out of college, everybody was pretty much predicting he would be the GOAT. So, it was kind of basically along those lines. So it is now a week, or no, it's like 2 or 3 weeks before the combine. And for anybody who doesn't know what the combine is, basically it's when all the college football players that are coming out of college and entering the NFL draft, they'll basically have workouts for NFL scouts and owners. So, they'll have like the combine at one location. It'll be a different location almost every year. It's been in Dallas, it's been in LA, blah, blah, blah. And basically, like I said, these guys will work out. They'll take endurance tests. They'll take like speed tests. They'll take their 40-yard dash times, their vertical leap, just like every, aspect of their physical prowess. And like I said, it's a few weeks before the combine. Cam is by himself at his college field, or at his high school field, excuse me. He went back home since he's about to prepare for the combine. and he's at his old high school football field. He's basically throwing the football from the 50-yard line and hitting the goalpost every time. So just kind of showing off how accurate he is. Well, eventually, some guy in a very odd, almost animalistic outfit, he almost looked like the QAnon shaman for a second, but with more fur on him. Basically, we see him behind Cam. Cam doesn't notice him, and the person attacks Cam, basically swings a large metal mallet at Cam's head. When Cam comes to, he's in the hospital. He has a giant gash on his head with multiple stitches. The doctors say that he has a concussion. They are recommending that he not go to the NFL combine, or the USFF combine, excuse me. Only for the chance that if he gets another head injury, he won't be able to play football ever again. I mean, he may even die there, because like I said, his skull was cracked open. He's got this giant gash on his head, but he claims that he's fine. His family's not sure. Like, his mother wants him to do the right thing. She doesn't necessarily want him to kill himself. His brother, though, is pushing him to go to the combine regardless of the head injury. And then one day, his agent calls him, Tim, played by Tim Heidecker, like I said, from the Tim and Eric show. And he lets Cam know that Isaiah White is interested in working out with him, which is a major deal. I mean, that would be like, Tom Brady wanting to, train with a college quarterback coming out of college right now. So yeah, Isaiah White wants to train with this guy for a week at his private compound, basically just to see if he's going to give him his blessing, because Isaiah White hasn't made the decision yet on whether he's going to retire or not. His contract is up. The team is very willing to re-sign him if he decides to stay. But if he decides to retire, then they're probably going to, grab Cameron Cade. So, of course, once we get to the compound, that's when everything starts to get a little wacky. As before he even gets to the compound, when he's at the outside perimeter, he sees a bunch of rabid Isaiah White fans. I mean, they're dressed in San Antonio Savior's colors. They've got like painted faces, like they're the hardcore football fans, the topless football fans that you see at like 5 below temperature Chicago Bear games, the absolute rabid fans that we see. And at first they think that it's Isaiah because it's like a limousine that's coming through the area. So they get all excited thinking that it's Isaiah. But then when one of them goes right up to the limo and puts their face up to the window, they see that it's not Isaiah, that it's Cameron Cade. And it's a woman, and she instantly just starts yelling at the guy, "We don't want you. We don't want you." And you see like all the other members of this, little group that are, kind of congregating outside of Isaiah White's compound, start throwing stuff at the limo, start yelling expletives at Cam Cade. So it's very obvious Isaiah White's fans don't want Cam here. Once he gets inside, he's not greeted by anyone. The door is open. It's this beautiful, sprawling compound. Like I said, you almost can't see the house from outside. Like it almost seems like the house is underground mostly, or the compound is underground mostly, because when you walk up to it, it's just like an entrance, with just a lot of land around it, a lot of desert. So I'm assuming since it's the San Antonio Spurs, they're probably in Texas. So the point is, and then at this point, we find out that the movie is cut up into chapters, and the first chapter, and the chapters are actually days. So Isaiah is at this Cam is at this compound for 6 total days, and each day has a title. So day 1 is called Fun. And that's where, they're just kind of chilling out. They're throwing the football around. They're running some pass patterns, things like that, doing some skills training, like, throwing the football at targets, accuracy training, things like that. Everything seems cool. Nothing seems nefarious. And the day ends and there's no problem. That same day, we meet Jim Jeffries' character, which is, like I said, Isaiah White's personal doctor named Marco. We find out that Isaiah has this regimen that he does where he removes his own blood. He basically takes some of his blood out of his body, and then later on, when he needs an extra boost, he re-injects it back into his body. And this is something that has been done in the past. I think it's actually illegal in the real NFL and in the UFC. I know it's illegal in the UFC. But there's other organizations that kind of stop it too, because supposedly there's elements in your plasma that kind of help you, recover from injuries quicker, recover from soreness, things like that. So it's like if you inject yourself with your own blood, it's kind of like, it's almost like a steroid boost. Not quite steroids. It's an exaggeration, obviously, but it's something along those lines.
That character is probably my favorite. Honestly, I like
Jim Jeffries. Oh, hell yeah. I love that guy. I love that guy in real life. He's hysterical. But even in this movie, yeah, he had this great attitude where he knew he was doing shit wrong, but he's like, whatever. What are you going to do? I love that. So like I said, we see that Isaiah's been injecting his own blood into himself. And Jim Jeffries actually gives Cam, at this point, Cam is in an ice bath. It's the end of the first day. He's tired. He had a good workout. And Marco gives him just a little tiny shot of Isaiah's blood. Not Cameron's own blood, but Isaiah's blood, which kind of goes against what they just were talking about. But, there is a point. We'll get to it in a little bit. After getting that little shot of blood, Cam feels great. His body recovers a lot quicker, blah, blah, blah. So the next day is called Poise. Day 2 is called Poise. Let's just go through all the days now. Day 3 is called Leadership. Day 4 is called Resilience. Day 5 is called Vision. And the final day is called Sacrifice. So those are basically the chapter names, if you will. After a while, now I'm not going to go over every single little scene that happens, but at one point, Cam attends a party at Isaiah White's house. He gets maybe a little bit too intimate, not purposely intimate with Isaiah White's wife, which, by the way, man, did they ugly her up or what? Julia Fox, who plays Elsie White, Isaiah White's wife, looks nothing like herself in the movie. They gave her blonde hair, blonde eyebrows. Like, they made her look Swedish. I thought she looked unattractive, which is so weird. Like, you're married to like the greatest football player ever.
I also think one problem is she's just not that good of an actress either. Like,
that definitely helps. I mean, at least for this role, she just was not well cast at all.
Because like when she first kind of shows up on screen, she's playing like the welcoming like spouse of the superstar. Like, and if that was me, I would have just been more annoyed and like, what the hell is like this? Like,
exactly.
I don't know.
So, I forgot to mention that when Cameron arrived at the compound, Isaiah did take his cell phone away and says that it has to be total isolation, no distractions. Now, obviously, as the training continues, it gets more and more intense. At one point, Isaiah brings in some ringers to kind of come in and work out with Cam, but they're basically there just for Cam to just kind of destroy. Not necessarily physically, even though in one instance that he does do that. He literally leaves a guy trembling, like literally convulsing on the field, bleeding profusely and convulsing, while all the other guys in Isaiah's crew kind of surround him and just start cheering for Cam. And at this point, Isaiah literally says, I'm so proud of you right now. And I bet your dad would be proud of you too, blah, blah, blah. Forgot to mention that Cam's dad died when he was young. So he was already, no. He died before, while he was still in high school. There is a little bit of a backstory as to why Cam even plays the game of football, but I'll bring that up a little bit later. After the little party at Isaiah's house after the first night, the next morning, Isaiah is there in Cam's room holding a gun, basically saying, "Did you fuck her? Did you fuck her?" And obviously he's talking about his wife. And Cam instantly is like, "No, man, I didn't fuck anybody. I got a girl." And that's when Isaiah starts talking about how if you got people in your life that you're not willing to hurt, you're never going to be the greatest of all time. You're never going to be the GOAT if you're afraid to hurt people's feelings. And Cam didn't really say anything to that. He just kind of acknowledged the statement. But obviously, Cam seems like the kind of guy that wants to stay faithful to his girlfriend, high school girlfriend, too. So these two have been together at least 4 or 5 years. So, and they're obviously engaged. So, let's see what else. At one point in the movie, Cam is soaking in the sauna and he ends up getting attacked by the same woman who the kind of the fan of Isaiah White who was yelling at him, "We don't want you, we don't want you." Somehow she breaks into the house, and I don't think she broke into the house. I'm pretty sure that Isaiah let her in, and maybe this was like a test for Cam. So basically, we see the woman literally, she's already in the sauna when Cam lays down in there. She kind of crawls out from under the bench. She grabs one of the rocks, one of the rocks that creates the steam in the sauna, and she goes to attack him, but she makes the mistake that most idiots make of screaming before she attacks. Rather than just smashing his head with the rock and then screaming, she screams first, which of course lets Cam know that he's about to be attacked. He gets out of the way. He ends up strangling the woman, but he doesn't kill her. He basically strangles her to the brink of death, but she's not dead at that point. At that point, Isaiah walks in and he's like happy. He's like, "All right, I'm glad to see that you're willing to do whatever it takes, to survive, to realize your goals, blah, blah, blah." And then Isaiah just kind of, the woman basically comes to after being strangled, and she tries to attack Cam from behind, but then Isaiah stabs her in the midsection, and then he throws her against the wall like a goddamn superhero. So obviously this blood that Isaiah White's been injecting into himself is giving this guy, like, I don't want to say superhuman strength, but definitely more than your average human. That's for sure. I mean, he threw this woman across a sauna like she was a rag doll, and she slammed her head against the back wall and pretty much died instantly at that point. So at least Cam didn't have that woman's life on his hands. It was Isaiah that killed her. And then a couple of more. It was a really weird scene because there was a couple of more of the fans. Like, I don't know, they were almost dressed like, not dressed, they weren't dressed at all. They were barely clothed, but they were like, they painted their bodies to make, I don't know, they looked almost demonic looking, but they were just two regular dudes. But it was just a very odd scene because it's like, when Isaiah killed the woman, they went and checked on the woman, and when they realized she was dead, they started like screaming and crying, but they never attacked Isaiah. Obviously, they're fans of his. So it was just a very odd scene altogether. And then he tells Cam to just leave and I'll clean up the mess. I'll take care of what's going on in here, which obviously means that Marco, Jim Jeffries, is the one who actually has to clean up in there, blah, blah, blah. All right. Like I said, there's more, nefarious scenes here and there. That some of them are actually slipping my mind since the movie wasn't all that great. So I'm just going to go ahead and skip to the end. Basically, near the end of the movie, we find out that the whole thing is basically a deal with the devil. Basically, the San Antonio Saviors owners have made a deal with the devil where their quarterback, whatever quarterback plays for them, and they actually go back in history and show that the last two quarterbacks before Isaiah White, who were with the team for a very long time, like each of them was with the team for like 20 years. So you see how the uniforms in the museum are, the old timey football uniforms, because the Saviors have the same quarterback for, up to 20 years. So what it is they make a deal. They've made a deal with the devil where they make a sacrifice. And the sacrifice is basically whoever loses a battle to the death between Isaiah and Cam. So basically, during the sixth day, which, like I said, is titled Sacrifice, Isaiah lets Cam know, well, if you want to walk down that tunnel behind me, you got to get through me. One of us is going to walk through that tunnel, and one of us is going to get put 6 feet under. you decide which. So of course they have a knockdown drag out fight right outside the sauna, right in the same room where, you know, the follower where Isaiah killed one of his followers. Eventually Cameron gets the upper hand. He grabs a solid gold football helmet that Isaiah has on a pedestal in this room and just starts smashing it into Isaiah's head. This is after Isaiah has already broken his throwing arm, which it's again, it just seemed really odd to me that Isaiah would break this guy's arm. Yes, I understand he broke it with the intention of keeping the job himself and killing Cam, but it's like, on the very off chance that Cam can still win that fight, you just fucked over the team by breaking his arm. But obviously, it's a deal with the devil situation. Maybe the devil will fix his arm. You know, maybe that's why their quarterbacks last so long, because the devil, you know, makes sure. And mind you, I'm saying deal with the devil. The devil is never mentioned in this movie. Not Satan, not Beelzebub, nobody. I'm just going by the fact that there was a giant pentagram on the 50-yard line of the football field that, you know, after the fight. So basically, after Cameron kills Isaiah White and he's got his broken throwing arm, he walks down the tunnel. And at the end of the tunnel, we see all of the San Antonio Saviors owners dressed just like the character that attacked Cam at the football field. Yes, as it turns out, the Saviors owners sent that guy to attack Cam for two reasons. A, to see if he had the resilience to come back and still be the greatest ever. And B, to isolate him because they wanted him alone at the compound. You know, they didn't want him to have communication with his mom, his brother, anybody. They wanted him isolated. So they figured the head injury and then the offer from Isaiah White to, you know, train with them for a week kind of, you know, made it possible that Cam was able to be isolated. So the owners are all there. And then we actually see the person who attacked them. And I'm still not sure. It's probably the guy. I mean, you remember the big black guy who woke Cam up every morning, splashed water on him? It may have been him, but when they showed the close-up of the mask, I don't know. It looked like his high school football coach. And don't forget, at that scene, he literally says goodbye to his football coach and then gets attacked by that character 5 minutes later. So I don't know. I'm starting to think that maybe his high school football coach was involved even, or
I feel like we get like a little montage somewhere. It's been obviously a handful of days since I seen it. Well, actually, no, not that long. We're actually recording pretty quick, but there was a montage somewhere in like the final 10-15 minutes where it kind of alludes to the cult aspect of like the ownership having their hooks in them like all the way going back.
Yes,
when he was a kid,
back to his childhood. Yep.
Yeah, because they show like the dad with, is it the agent or the manager?
It's the owner. The dad is the owner. They find a picture where the dad has the dad and the owner are in a picture together.
Yeah, so I would assume because we get those or that included in the montage, that all the way up through like if he was in like Pee Wee League, junior high, I think it was like orchestrated. You know, they kind of make the dad made the team ownership made the deal with the devil. Then they go scouting, and then they get like the parent to buy in. The dad had to buy in.
Yeah.
Now I don't know if the dad dying is part of the sacrifice, or if that just was happenstance that the dad happened to die.
Right. They never tell us how the dad dies. Like, if they would have told us how, it might have clued us in.
Like normally, I would say, oh, he just died from whatever, like, you know, maybe it was an accident, maybe it was natural causes. But the only reason I give some credence to it is because they don't really specify. Like, it's just that the dad died.
Yep, exactly. So, all right, so back to our final scene. Like I said, at this point, Cam walks down the tunnel after killing Isaiah in the fight. When he gets out there, he's greeted with this giant spectacle. There's a marching band, there's a cheerleaders. All of the team owners are there, multiple members of the cult in their kind of outfits, and Tom, the agent, Isaiah White and Cam's agent, who obviously we find out at this point that yes, Tom has been involved this entire time. I mean, he even mentions talking to his father and meeting Cam when he was much, much younger. So, this is definitely something that's been like 15 years in the making for this cult. So, and Isaiah White's wife is there, which is really weird because I don't know if that means that she's just the wife of whoever the current quarterback is, because I mean, her husband just got killed, but she doesn't show any emotion whatsoever. And basically what's happening is all the owners are up on like a lifted stage, and at down on the floor in front of the stage is Elsa White, Isaiah White's wife, with the contract and a pen in her hand. And it's the contract. It's basically, which again, doesn't make sense. How do you sign a player before the draft even happens? But again, we're talking about, the demonic shit. So I guess I'll allow it. They're pressuring him to sign the contract. They're like, sign the contract. And then finally, the owner himself looks at Cam and says, sign the contract or I will kill your fucking family. And at that point, you just kind of see Cam's expression change where he's like, yeah, I don't know. I don't think I'm going to sign today. And then we see the weird outfitted character who attacked Cam at the high school football field earlier in the movie. He walks up behind Cam with the exact same metal mallet, and he looks like he's about to attack, but instead this time Cam ducks. He's able to get the upper hand. He's able to disarm the character. And right before he buries the pointy end of the mallet into his neck, that's when we get the close-up of the face. And that's why I started to think, is that the football coach? It just, maybe I'm being racist. Maybe all black people look the same in that movie, but I know that's not the case. It's either Malik, the guy who was, waking him up, splashing him with water every morning to wake him up, or it was his high school football coach. So, you make the decision. Anyway, after killing that character, he ends up picking up a sword, like a ceremonial sword that they have there, and he starts to advance towards the owners. And then the next thing that happens, I almost don't understand. Elsa gets up with a knife in her hand. I skipped something rather important. Marco, Jim Jeffries' character, does end up getting murdered by Isaiah White's wife after he tries to tell Cam to run. Literally the day before the signing, the day before day 6, he tells Cam, run, just leave, run. Apparently, Elsie catches wind of this, and we see her. The way that they shot the scene, all we see is her stabbing someone, but the way that the scene was shot, it almost looks like she's stabbing Cam. So at first I thought, holy shit, is she fucking attacking Cam this early in the movie? But no, as it turns out, in the very next scene, we see Marco's severed head up on a platter, literally up on a silver platter. So now we know that, yeah, Elsie was actually stabbing Marco, and that was retaliation for Marco trying to get Cam to leave. So back to our final ending. Cam now has a sword. At that point, he's already killed that kind of enforcer guy, that big dude. Then the owners start to realize that, oh shit, we fucked up. At that point, Elsie walks up or gets up with a knife in her hand, like a butcher knife, and literally says, God damn it, do I have to do everything myself? She ends up getting up and tripping and stabbing herself in the throat, which I don't know. That left me very like why would you do that? How is that
anticlimactic?
Yes, big time. It just doesn't make any sense. Whatever. And we don't even see it, by the way. We hear it. We see her get up from the table, and then we hear her. She walks out of camera shot, and then we hear her trip and fall. And when the camera pans back to her, the butcher knife is in her throat. It's completely in her damn throat. So she keels over dead. And at this point, Cam just starts attacking all of the owners. He throws at one point, he stabs one of the owners from behind and, basically rips down so that, basically all his innards fall out. he ends up throwing the sword at another one of the owners and basically getting him from behind. Who knew Cam was such a fucking sword expert? But there it is. Then let's see. And then it's the actual owner, the main owner of the Saviors, played by Richard Lipper. He basically says to him, it's not too late. You can do the right thing. We'll turn the other cheek. We'll forget about what you've already done. Just sign the contract and let's move on with our lives. But of course, Cam says nope. And the owner actually is up against the, the uprights. And Cam basically decapitates him with the sword against the uprights, where you kick the field goal, blah, blah, blah. And the head just kind of rolls off, but the body's still kind of standing there. It's not a bad little effect. CGI, obviously, but it's not bad. And then at that point, all that's left is his agent, Tom. And the marching band and the cheerleaders, but luckily Cam doesn't attack any of them. I guess he just decides they were an innocent party to this whole thing, so he doesn't bother attacking any of them. But the agent is still there, Tom, played by Tim Heidecker, and basically Cam is holding the sword up, and it looks like he's gonna bring the sword down and kill Tom. And Tom is sitting there like, all right, fine, fuck it, just kill me then, kill me, I don't care. And then at that point, of course, Cam changes his mind. I'm not sure if Cam knew what was about to happen or not, or if it was just happenstance. But basically, as soon as Cam refuses to kill his agent and drops the sword and walks away, we see the agent mysteriously dragged by like an invisible force. That's when we first see the pentagram on the 50-yard line. So we see an invisible force grab Tom, the agent, and spread him, to all 5 points on the pentagram, 2 arms, 2 legs, and his head. And something is holding him down. He's trying to get up. He's screaming. He's apologizing. Who is he apologizing to? I wonder. And finally, we see Cam walk out of the stadium, and in the background, we see an explosion of blood. So obviously, there had to be a sacrifice to that day. And since Cam decided, I assume that Isaiah should have been the sacrifice. I thought that was the point of the, battle to the death, is that Isaiah is the sacrifice, and then Cam signs the contract to become the new GOAT. But for whatever reason, the devil decided to take Tom with him, and he exploded in just a glorious cloud of blood. And the movie pretty much ends right there with Cam walking out, still with his broken left arm. He's still, he did all of this with a broken arm too. So obviously, Cam is like at the top of his physical conditioning. Obviously, he's like 21, 22 years old. So I'm not gonna knock that too much as unbelievable. But like I said, folks, I am a petty and vindictive guy, and when I see a horror movie character know what needs to be done and does it, I fucking love it. Think back to Pete Davidson's The Home. Think back to You're Next. You're Next, my favorite movie of 2013. Just absolutely love it. So yeah, like I said, when a horror character doesn't pussyfoot around and actually takes out the antagonist the way that they should, it leaves me with a smile on my face. So despite the fact that overall, I didn't really enjoy this movie that much, at least it left me with the best scene the movie had to offer. So, that's what I'm thinking about as I'm driving home from the theaters. The owner getting decapitated, the QAnon shaman getting an axe tip to the neck, Elsie killing herself like an idiot. So yeah, like I said, it's got that guilty pleasure vibe to it. But as I said before, it's too little too late by the time we get to it. And, despite this scene being pretty cool, it does not save the movie, unfortunately. It takes an hour and a half to get to that final scene. And most of that hour and a half, hell, for Mike and I, who are football fans, I found it to be dull. I couldn't imagine Don. I'm shocked Don was even able to stay awake, because I don't even see
it was a struggle.
Yeah, I'm sure. Like I don't see non-football fans gravitating towards this film, even if they're a horror fan. If you're not a football fan, I mean, you're setting yourself up for a lot of football scenes, a lot of training scenes. Some of the training scenes do get pretty gnarly. I mean, some of you guys remember from the trailer that one player who takes footballs to the face, with the automatic ball thrower. That scene was pretty cool. So, like I said, there's little bits here and there that are worth watching. Marlon Wayne's performance is pretty cool. Jim Jeffries' performance was pretty cool, but overall, it's like this is the one that you can wait for streaming. When it hits a Netflix or something like that, if you feel the need to, add to your 2025 numbers, then I would say go ahead and check it out. More for the style than anything. Like I said, we've barely even spoken about the style, even though that's probably the high point of the movie. There's some cool scenes like X-ray scenes where we see the players' skeletons as they're, playing each other or fighting, not fighting, when they're training together. When one of them takes, when Cam leaves that player trembling on the ground, it goes to that cool X-ray shot that I thought was pretty cool. And whenever I see that, I kind of dig it. And like I said, there's lots of cool lighting, lots of red lighting, lots of blue lighting throughout, neon, stuff like that. So, I mean, visually, it's a beautiful film. Storytelling wise, it could have used some work, definitely. And it definitely could have used more horror elements, that's for sure. But otherwise, it's just one of those middle of the road movies, maybe even leaning more towards the bad side of the road that I probably won't ever revisit. But there it is, folks. So I'll leave it at that and send it back to Mike.
Yeah, I would say the movie looks and sounds good. It has a pretty good sound design that's good for the theater, but otherwise it's just kind of dull. Like I said, it's just a little scatterbrain. There's decent ideas that are like kind of surface level. They just don't go very deep on it, and I was kind of confused too. Like I know, okay, I know they made like a deal with the devil to get the quarterback, but I wasn't sure if like is there something in this deal that makes the quarterback like that good, or is it just to guarantee they get like the best prospect on the
No,
team?
that's gotta, I mean, considering some of the physical things that Isaiah White did in this movie. Oh, and I forgot the whole blood thing. I'm so sorry, folks. There's a major element to this whole thing that I skipped completely. The blood that Isaiah White was taking actually turned out not to be his blood. It actually turned out to be a conglomeration of the last two quarterbacks' blood as well as his own. So it was kind of like I hate to bring up Jesus Christ, but it's kind of like how some movies will have like bits of Jesus's actual blood, like think Demon Knight or the first Nun movie, movies like that where they actually have some of Jesus's blood. It kind of felt something like that, where they were basically every player that became, the Savior's quarterback, they collected up some of the blood and then just kept, the next quarterback would take it to help his skills, then the next quarterback, blah, 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 blah. So, yeah, I totally forgot to mention that because it seems like that, because that adds a little bit more of a supernatural element to it too. I mean, obviously the deal with the devil, once we get to the end, we get that supernatural element. But
I guess it doesn't make the player infallible because the previous quarterback got injured on the field. It just I guess enhances their already good skills.
Oh, plus his healing. I mean, that was a career-ending injury that he had, and somehow he was able to come back 10 years later. That's not normal. Like, Joe Theismann ain't coming back from that leg break, Granted, Joe was further in his career than Isaiah was at the point of his leg break, but still, I mean, when you see the injury, like I said, his femur was sticking out of his fucking thigh. Like blood coming out, it was a gnarly. I mean, like I said, probably some of the best gore in the movie. That and Jim Jeffries' severed head, maybe, but otherwise. Yeah. So yeah, sorry about that, folks. I didn't mean to skip that mildly important element of the movie.
All right. Well, I guess that'll wrap it up, and it'll put us at the 2-minute warning for the end of the podcast. So let's tell people if there's anything anything else new for them to listen to? Venom? Anything?
Nothing new from me. Still, Creature Comforts episode 41 is the latest episode where we looked at 1980s Night of the Demon. We have our movie picked out for the next episode. We even have our day picked out. So hopefully next weekend, we'll get that episode recorded. Hopefully I can turn around the editing time quick so that I can actually release the September episode in September, but we'll see. And that's pretty much it from me. No guest spots or any other shows to speak of. I'll let Mike talk about the main show as I usually do, and that's it for me.
All right, Don.
Yeah, not much. Creature Comforts should be available. Looking forward to our next pick. Shouldn't it maybe out by the time you hear this, maybe not, but I joined NFW for a look at Tucker and Dale versus Evil. And again, still waiting on some of the beginning of the year roundtable discussions I had to get released. Not sure when that's going to happen, but hopefully before the end of the year.
Cool. All right, so the main show got moved. Hopefully, we will get that recorded the upcoming week, because if not, it'll probably be at least another couple of weeks to get it recorded. And that's on my end. I just happen to be busy the next couple of weekends, but hopefully we can get it recorded going into this weekend, and that'll be in the can for me to edit. And that's pretty much it. Does something come out this week in the theater? Do you guys know?
Yes. Unfortunately, The Strangers Chapter 2.
Oh, no. Okay.
Yeah, great. I mean, about the only thing I'm looking forward to is Richard Brake as the sheriff. Otherwise, I don't even want to watch this movie, but I kind of have to, I guess.
When does do you know when Black Phone 2 comes out?
That's in October. I don't know the exact date, but it's October. It's a Halloween movie this year.
I know you avoid trailers. Have you seen the trailer for that? Like in the
I
theater?
saw a tiny little piece of it, but out of context, it didn't really tell me anything. So
Okay.
no, I still know nothing about it.
Well, I'll keep it vague, but I'll say what it seems like they're going for into it makes me think of like a franchise from the past, and I'm like, I can see. I'll put it this way, because you were higher on the first one than me. I didn't dislike it or anything, but you were definitely higher on
Oh,
it.
yeah.
But I can see potentially, because what they're going for with the second one, I could see me or just myself liking it a lot more if they pull off the execution. But I don't want to get into details to spoil, and we'll have plenty to say once it actually comes out. But anyways, so it looks like we'll probably be talking about what is it, The Strangers Chapter 2? Is that what it's called?
Yeah.
Yeah, probably that. I'll never put the 100% guarantee, but most likely it's gonna be that.
I mean, there
So,
was a slim chance that we weren't going to talk about him. Like literally, about an hour into the movie, like I said, since the theater was so empty, I was actually on my phone. And I remember about an hour into the movie hitting the chat and saying, maybe we should pick something else. But then once we got that ending, I'm like, well, okay, it's horror enough, I guess.
yeah, and once the recording of the other show or the main show fell through, it was like, well, if we're gonna do this tonight, it's kind of a last minute to try to get another movie in this time
Yeah,
frame.
exactly. I mean, like I told the guys, it's Sunday. It's 6:45 right now. I got out of work 2 hours ago, so I have a DVR full of football to watch, and that's exactly what I'm doing as soon as we're done here.
All right. Well, with that said, that's gonna wrap this episode up. Thanks everybody for listening. Don't be strangers, because we'll be discussing The Strangers Chapter 2 on the next episode, most likely. So, with that said, let's say bye, listeners.
Later.
Adios, QAnon shamans who like to attack football players.
Peace.